To no one's surprise, it's a lighter news week following the announcements dumped at Summer Games Fest and everything else from the last few weeks. But for the first time in months, we're back for 2 consecutive weeks in a row, baby! 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 Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 271 of the It's Obvious podcast. My name's Garrett Drake, and I'm joined online by my dear friend Jacob Alka. How are you, my friend?
Garrett, how you doing? It's been so long since I've spoken to you. It's been a whole week, it feels like. And
actually, it hasn't, Jacob. We have big news to share right at the top. Jacob and I broke the long-awaited, I don't know what you would call it, curse or delay of playing Hunt Showdown together.
We did. It was fun. I had a really good time, actually.
And here's the best news about it, dude. We had like the 3 core, granted like minor versions of them, the 3 core experiences you can have in a Hunt Showdown match. We had a match where we went in and kicked ass immediately, got out with the bounty, it was sick. Jacob got the most kills in his first match. It was awesome. And the second match, we got slaughtered. Actually, we were in like an extended gunfight and lost the fight pretty embarrassingly.
We had poor positioning and we could have done better.
Yeah, it was definitely our fault. And the third match, we had a big escape where we killed the boss and people chased us down all the way to the exit. And we made it out. So it was a lot of fun. And
it was fun.
I'm going to be honest with you, Jacob. I'd love to play with you again in the near future.
We should. Yeah, whenever you have some time this week. And I don't have to get up early the next day. I'd love to reconvene because it was a lot of fun. I've been sleeping on this game, I will say.
It's a good one, man. It's a good one. It's not totally unfamiliar in some of its mechanics and ideas, but it's fresh in the sense like with the setting and the weapons and the freedom and the player choice and whatnot is what keeps me coming back.
I think what I liked most about it was the just the audio design in general. Everything's just like, I mean, there were a couple of times where I just ran up on some crows and you were like, what are you doing?
It's like the crows, the ducks.
Like it wasn't even a thing that I was even thinking about because I was just like taking everything in. And I was like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't run into birds that make really loud noises. But also just the environment as well as like I just like the setting of the game. It's creepy and also just I don't know, get your heart pumping. Especially when you hear like the growls of the monsters and whatnot. It's like, oh my gosh, like which one am I fighting this time? Which one's going to kill me? But I enjoyed it. I need to get more familiar with like the guns and whatnot, but really fun game.
I'm glad, Jacob. It was a great honor and privilege to finally share that experience with you. And I'm glad we can share that with everyone tuning into this episode. Like we said, we're back for the second week in a row, and it's been a minute since we've actually accomplished this, but we were able to do it, and we're grateful for that. In spite of the slow news week, but there's some decent stories to cover when we get to the news and some great questions in AskIOG. And we thank y'all in advance for those. But Jacob, before we jump into what we've been playing and everything, tell me how your last week was.
Yeah, it was just another week, Garrett. Nothing exciting happened. And then it was such just another week that I can't think of a single thing that's worth talking about.
That's all right, Jacob. I love your shirt, by the way, the Diva
Thank
shirt.
You. It's an old shirt, but it's Diva.
I am familiar with that one. I still have my May shirt.
Oh, yeah.
May was my gal back in the day, and I know people hate May. I don't know if they've altered May or not in Overwatch 2.
She still sucks.
Okay. I loved playing as May back in the day.
Yeah, she's fun.
But yeah, we're going to talk about Overwatch 2 a bit, actually, later on.
A little bit.
My week also is not very noteworthy, Jacob. Not totally upset to say that, such is life sometimes, but I worked, and that's all I can recall from last week. Actually, I have some news, I guess. I've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once 3 times now, and I've also seen Top Gun 3 times now in theaters.
I went to see Top Gun as well on Father's Day with my dad.
Nice. What'd you think?
It was good. I really liked it a lot. I mean, obviously he loved it because I don't know when the first one came out. I forgot which year exactly, but he was probably around, like, it might have been in his 30s when it came out, or maybe he was in high school even. I don't remember. But when he was a younger guy, obviously the first Top Gun came out, so it was really nostalgic for him. So, and he was like telling me about all these like connections and stuff, and he was just telling me like this situation in his life where he was at when this movie came out. So, which is funny. But he really liked it, and I liked it too.
Yeah, it's been great to see reactions from the crowds I've been seeing the movie with. It just crossed $1 billion at the box office, which is a big deal. One, because Tom Cruise has never accomplished that once in his career before.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, but secondly, that's outperformed recent Marvel movies, recent other Disney movies, like all the big hitters that you typically make close to or over $1 billion. It's outpaced all of them, which is pretty wild. I think it just really comes down to the mass appeal, like the American spirit of it. Of course, the legacy sequel to the original, and then word of mouth. And on top of that, it really is just like a fun, happy, good time with the movies. Like, I mean, of course, there's some drama, but it's just light enough to where you don't feel heavy leaving the movie. You feel uplifted and excited. And I think that's kept people coming back. That was a part of it for me, but also just how well made the film is. And how much I appreciate the craftsmanship behind it from every angle, from the editing to the camera work to the commitment to practical effects as often as possible, from the performances, even with like the lighter story and like the intentionally like relatively cheesy dialogue and a lot of it. I really appreciate those aspects. It's a really good time. But yeah, that being said, I was amazed that this many weeks after it came out, it was still a sold out theater when I saw it yesterday with my parents again. Oh, and yeah. My favorite thing about seeing big movies like this, it reminds me when Force Awakens came out back in, what was that, 2014 or I think? I think it was 2014. I can't remember.
I think it was later than that.
2015 maybe. Is when you go back to see it again, you're seeing it with people who have never seen it before, and just seeing people's reactions to certain moments is always fun. Like the dad next to me yesterday was having the time of his life watching this movie. He was cheering and he was like ready to jump out of his seat, and like he was just so thrilled with a lot of the moments in the movie, and it was just awesome to be next to him while he reacted. And same thing with Everything Everywhere. That's also one of the best movies I've seen in a while. Every time I've seen that, there's been people who hadn't seen it before just having the best reactions to a lot of stuff that happens in it. So that's always really fun about going to the movies.
Mm-hmm. Force Awakens 2015. So you're close.
2015, yeah. Okay. We have a great Star Wars question from Big Colt that I'm actually really excited to answer here in a bit. Speaking of Star Wars, I'll just go ahead and give this now. We can knock this out before we get into the gaming stuff. Obi-Wan, the series is concluded. This is a no spoilers final review.
Thank you.
I probably sounded extremely harsh last week, and I stand by most of what I said. I definitely do not hate the show. I don't even think it's a bad show. I just thought it was kind of average. That being said, I think the final 2 episodes were pretty solid all around. I still think the Reva or Reva, tomato situation stuff isn't great. I still think she could have been a better developed, better written character, but I do like the ideas with her character a lot. I mean, I could go into details why. I just don't want to spoil it for Jacob or anyone else who plans to watch the series who hasn't watched it yet. I've heard a couple of different reviews. People say like, they kind of stand where I do, or saying she isn't a bad character per se, but if she had like her own show, like an Inquisitor show about what her arc is supposed to be and explored in greater detail with more time rather than being crammed into the Obi-Wan show, it could have been way more effective. And I totally agree with that. That aside, the exploration, what little we got ultimately, which is kind of a bummer, between Obi-Wan and Vader in the last 2 episodes was excellent, and I really liked it. And I would have loved to have seen more of that. I feel like after they had the quote-unquote rematch of the century, which I really do think was a great scene in the final episode, I think it'd be weird to do that again in a potential season 2. It seems like Disney is really leaning heavily toward a second season for Obi-Wan based on how this ends, which I'm honestly on board for. I'd love to see just some good old adventures of Obi-Wan doing his thing, and like the 10-year gap between season 1 and A New Hope and all the adventures he could go on could be really interesting. There's a lot they could do there, and a lot they could pull from, granted some of it's not canon anymore, but like Legends comics and stuff could be fun stories to explore with Obi-Wan. But overall, I was ultimately pretty disappointed, but there are bits and pieces from almost every episode that I really, really liked. And there are moments that I wouldn't say necessarily fill in gaps in the original trilogy, but certainly add some weight and emotional impact to certain lines and moments from the original trilogy, which is pretty cool. That stuff was handled pretty well, I feel like. So I'd say if I had to give it 1 out of 10 rating, I'd probably give it a 6.
Okay. But
that being said, I thought Ewan McGregor killed it. Hayden Christensen, what little he was given, he killed it as well. Not all the action was great. Some of it was pretty poor, I felt like. But the last 2 episodes gave me what I think a lot of people were looking forward to in a show like this, which I appreciate. So that is my final non-spoiler review of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney+. You started yet?
The snow. I have a question about the series in general, though, just in sort of like its tone or its feel, I guess. Did it feel more like the prequel trilogy, or did it sort of feel more like the original three? What's your synopsis in that?
I would say it feels more like the original three.
Okay.
All of Star Wars has a bit of camp to it, but this series is a bit more dramatic and in line with the original trilogy. But there are moments that call directly back to the prequels, which is great. And I loved all that stuff. I think Zach and I obviously watched it week to week as it came out, which made it a little more of an annoying slog. And I'm interested to hear someone's review like yours after you finish it, like blowing through it much quicker than we did, to see if it's more effective in its storytelling. But waiting week to week was kind of frustrating based on how the story unraveled. But hearing it from you later on, I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, I might start it soon. Maybe this week. We'll see. If I get Disney Plus, I'm just going to watch a bunch of shows. I know I am, because I'm like behind on 5 shows I want to watch on the service. And there's like a couple movies on there I want to see too. So as soon as I hit that trigger, I'm just going to be full blown Disney Plus man.
You haven't seen Book of Boba Fett, have you?
No.
That show is pretty terrible, but there are a couple Mandalorian focused episodes that are great in the show, which is so bizarre that they chose to do that. But
so he's in the show?
He is, yeah. He's in like the second half of it pretty extensively. So,
is it a continuation after Mandalorian?
Yeah, his Mandalorian stuff picks up from. It's really bizarre creative choice. I don't know why they did it this way, but his story picks up shortly after season 2 of his own show. It's just kind of plugged into Book of Boba Fett as well. You could almost think of Book of Boba Fett like season 2.5 of The Mandalorian. Also a show that you might like more just binging it rather than watching it week to week, which I think is a shame for Disney Plus shows. Not all of them. Some of the Marvel shows are a bit better, but although I do like weekly releases because it keeps people talking more and I like the anticipation when a show is really good, I don't think a single one of their Marvel shows or even Star Wars shows, maybe apart from Mandalorian, have been good enough to really warrant the effectiveness of a week-to-week release, because I'm mostly just like kind of bummed out and disappointed after most episodes of their shows. But in hindsight, when I look back on them, I can imagine them being a bit more enjoyable binging through them rather than waiting week to week.
Yeah. I think I've sort of like changed my mind on that opinion, because I used to think that I liked weekly releases because of that very reason. Like there was always a discussion being happening, and you know, you always felt like, oh, I'm in the know. I'm a part of this culture that everyone's watching the show and everyone's talking about it on social media. But now I just I'm at the point where I like sitting down and watching like 1 to 2 to 3 episodes of a show at a time, and then, you know, I'll go a couple days and not watch any of it. But I never want to like watch an episode and then just have to wait a week to see what happens next. Like if I just had a choice, I'd rather just binge little chunks at a time. That's sort of my style.
Yeah, I think a great example of that recently has been the most recent or the newest season of Stranger Things. Granted, they do have part 1 and part 2, but part 2 is basically 2 feature-length movies. I think the final episode's like over 2 hours long or something, which is great. I think it's cool. But the majority of the season was released with part 1, and everyone's still talking about it. I mean, at least Stranger Things fans are, and it's still like a pretty notable topic, and it's been on my mind as well because I think it's very good. And I blew through the first part in a few days, and I loved all of it. And I've been thinking about it and actually anticipating part 2. Whereas Obi-Wan, like an episode would go by, I'm like, oh, you know, that was fine. And like it would be completely out of my mind until the next week rolled around. Whereas Stranger Things, even after blowing through part 1, I've thought about it a lot. And there's more to it than just like, oh, the story's good. Like the story is cool, but there's so many aspects about that show that just are pure excellence in many ways. That's why it's been on my mind. But
that's the thing, though. I think Stranger Things would have worked, you know, as a weekly release, because as I remember, 100%. Every episode is good. Like something happens in every episode.
And they're meaty too in this new season. They're all, I think the shortest one's like an hour, and most of them are like feature length. It's literally like watching a movie every week.
Yeah, there would be times where I would start one and I wouldn't even finish it in one sitting. Like I'd have to come back to it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's hit or miss for shows, but I do look forward to hearing your thoughts on some of these other shows that I had to wait week to week on.
No promises that I'll watch it this week, but I probably will.
Get back to us in your own time, Jacob. Speaking of Star Wars, Big Colt writes in and says, would you rather have a new Star Wars trilogy directed by Rian Johnson or 30 new Star Wars spin-off shows about minor side characters that nobody cares about? I have a very strong answer to this. I want to hear yours first, Jacob.
Do you want me to answer it for real or
for real? Yeah, like
from
honest,
the heart.
Your honest opinion.
So I have like an honest opinion, and then I have like a answer to the question. Which would you rather have first?
I'm not sure what the difference is.
Okay, so I don't know. I guess I
really want to hear your honest opinion.
Lately, I just haven't been that interested in Star Wars. I don't know if it's because of the last trilogy we got or what, but I'm not saying I'm like really itching for anything Star Wars right now. And that's sort of what I meant by my honest answer. I think I could be given the right material, and that could come in the form of a movie or a show. I think at this point I would be more excited about either a new movie trilogy or just a movie. It could be on Disney Plus, it could be in theaters, I don't care. Or it could be both. But I just want I kind of miss seeing Jedi. Like I want to see more Jedi. Ever since the prequel trilogy, we've been kind of starved for just Jedi. Like I don't know if I want to go
starved
like,
for
back.
sabers.
Yeah, like that. For me, growing up, that was a big part of Star Wars. But at the same time, like I still feel like Disney can make a really good Disney Plus TV show. Like I just maybe Obi-Wan wasn't 10 out of 10, but I feel like it was probably pretty good from what I've heard about it. And they have some more in the works. Like they have the Ahsoka show coming out. Isn't there another season of Bad Batch or something? I don't know.
Bad Batch, and there's a ton of Star Wars shows coming. Andor is coming.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm just in a weird mood with Star Wars right now. I don't really know how to explain it really well. It's just not something that I am thinking about a lot lately, even though Obi-Wan just came out. So it might just be me. I'm interested to see what you have to say about this question.
I can somewhat relate because I will say after the sequel trilogy, my interest in Star Wars did take a dip, unfortunately, because I thought it was just so terribly mishandled. From a storytelling standpoint, I think the filmmaking overall is pretty amazing, but like those movies look gorgeous, they sound great, and even most of the performances are awesome, but just the story was really a big bummer for me. And I think we're dangerously close to oversaturation of Star Wars through Disney Plus, and Lucasfilm has even announced that they believe the future of Star Wars is primarily through series rather than films. Now we know Taika Waititi's movie is still, I would say, mostly in pre-production because I don't even think he's finished the story yet, let alone like a script. But I am interested. I think we talked about it last week a little bit. I am interested to see what he's going to do because I do think Taika Waititi is a really awesome filmmaker and a really great storyteller too. I've heard mixed reviews on Thor Ragnarok, but I'm hoping it has the Jojo Rabbit effect where it's mostly silly, but there's like that gut punch of emotion that hits you out of nowhere like his best movies do. Mm-hmm. And I've heard some people comment that that's what it is. So I look forward to seeing what that is all about. But in regard to Big Colt's question, I honestly, and this may sound kind of strange, but I would much rather have the trilogy directed by Rian Johnson because even after I saw The Last Jedi, and even though The Last Jedi, I think, let me say it this way. When I first saw Last Jedi, I couldn't stand it because we won't go over the whole thing. We've been through this a million times before, but what Abrams set up in Force Awakens was pretty much trashed in The Last Jedi and then brought back from the dead in Rise of Skywalker, which made the whole trilogy just a mess. And had Rian Johnson had creative control from the beginning and gone into Last Jedi, I probably would have really loved Last Jedi. I think Last Jedi, excluding Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, is a pretty awesome movie. If I remove some really dumb stuff, I like Finn and Rose's storyline is a complete waste and it's stupid. But all the Rey, Kylo Ren stuff and what's his name, Snoke, and the Luke dynamic, I still don't love all the Luke stuff explored. I think it could have been a little more interesting than it was, but all of those ideas, I think, really, really work on their own, but in the context of the whole trilogy, I think it sucks. Now, I do think, like I said, excluding the other two movies, The Last Jedi is a really well-made movie for the most part. And that's a testament to Rian Johnson's talent, because Rian Johnson, I still believe, is an amazing filmmaker. Like, if you go back and watch Looper still kicks ass. Knives Out is excellent. And I know he's working on his Knives Out sequel that's coming relatively soon, but he's still very good at what he does. And I strongly believe that if he was given creative control for an entire trilogy from the beginning, it'd be great. But he was just caught in between. And for some weird reason, Lucasfilm let him tarnish everything Abrams set up in part 1. And he just kind of threw that to the wayside in part 2. And which was a bummer because the whole trilogy suffered for it. But let's just hope going forward that if Taika's doing a one-off Star Wars movie, it's with original characters. It's what I was going to kind of conclude with is I hope his movie, I think he said it's going to be all new cast, original characters, original story. Nothing to do with the Skywalkers, which I think we need a lot more of. I think The Mandalorian, although it's kind of dipped back into Skywalker stuff, which I'm hoping they don't really commit to that too much. The onset of The Mandalorian is the reason it is the most interesting out of all the Star Wars shows because it's new character, new stories, and that's what's made it feel the most fresh, I think. So I hope for more of that. I mean, Andor could be cool. He's obviously in Rogue One. We know how his story ends, but he could have gone on some cool adventures before. But I really would like to see stuff set in like High Republic era. The most interesting time periods going forward would be everything after Return of the Jedi and everything way before the prequels. That's what I hope for. But Big Colt. I'd take the Rian Johnson trilogy personally.
Yeah, sir. I didn't really comprehend the question that he was asking. I didn't realize Rian Johnson was attached to a trilogy for his question. I think I would still pick a trilogy if I had to pick one, though. I think he brought up a good point, though, about like the saturation of Star Wars with all the shows that they're that they've either released or that they're planning to release. I think that's going to happen. I think it might have already happened, to be honest. But like, even if we had just one or maybe just one show a year, or just maybe one show that's reoccurring, and then we do like some one-off shows. I think that would be good enough too. But yeah, I'm kind of afraid of just there being too much to the point where people can't keep up with it.
I do wish Disney would, exactly what you just said, would invest more into better writing and better production. Obi-Wan, if it was more focused from a storytelling standpoint and also had a better budget for just visual effects and stunts and many other aspects, it kind of brought it down as well. It could have been much more effective. And I would rather have less shows with much better production value overall than have like a million little shows that are just okay. But I mean, that just goes to show like that's the way the world is. I mean, people continue to produce content that makes money. Call of Duty being an example, it's been annual for years because people buy it every year. And we'll get back into microtransactions in a bit, but that's the reason microtransactions are here and why they're probably always going to exist, because although a lot of people complain online, there's still many, many people that spend a crap ton of money on microtransactions. So publishers are going to keep them around. So money talks, and that's why we get what we get.
I mean, they've been here for last 10, 12 years, and I don't think they're going anywhere.
Nope. Well, Jacob, that was an exhilarating intro, to say the least. I'd love to hear what you've been playing.
Yeah, sure. Been playing a few different things, a lot of the same stuff as last week. But probably the most exciting thing for me right now is I finally got back into Elden Ring. And from when I last talked about it, I think I was talking about how Morgoth in the capital was giving me a hard time. A few days ago, jumped back into it, went straight to him, probably fought him for 20 minutes, several deaths, several attempts of me not getting anywhere close. And, eventually I was finally getting to his like halfway phase where he like, I mean, I'm going to spoil it. It's not really that exciting, but he engulfs his sword in like this, I don't even know what it is. It's like flames or something. It's this orange effect on his sword. Then I think when you get him down to like 3/4 health or 1/4 health, he like also has a bleed effect. So he can like throw out blood and then he lights it on fire and it just explodes and like it's absolute chaos. But the key to me actually beating him was using my mimic summon, or what is it, a summon? It's like the little summoning bell thing, but it's the one that like turns into a version of you. I wasn't using that because I wanted to see if I could do it without using that mimic, but I caved and I used it and I beat it like the second time I tried using that. So
nice.
It wasn't too bad. And then besides that, I've just been doing some more exploring. I unlocked. So after you beat Morgoth, you find like you unlock like the snow area. So started
That's
going
where I'm at right
to
now.
explore. Okay. So I've been exploring that area a little bit. Across like the big ravine where that's the little bridge and the guy's shooting arrows at you. That was cool. I actually wish it was a little more challenging because it was really easy to get across. Like I was expecting to have like 3 guys trying to shoot arrows at me, but it was just one little dude, and he doesn't start shooting till you're like 3/4 of the way across the bridge.
That is a cool bridge to cross, though. I like that area.
It is. It's a beautiful like landscape and scenery. What else was I doing? Oh, so I just completed the last contract for Volcano Manor in the snowy area. So
nice.
When I play tonight, I'm actually gonna go back there and fight Riker, I think his name is. I think he's the boss or whatever. And I've heard that fight's a little challenging, so might be stuck on him for a little bit. But how I started watching a bunch of videos about Elden Ring and like, oh, what are like the good weapons to use? Have I been playing the wrong way this whole time? And like I just like one of the videos I looked up was like the most powerful weapons, and so I got to thinking like, oh, do I want to use like this great sword? Because the great sword apparently is just overpowered after they buffed it in one of the last patches. So I've been thinking about like maybe switching from my claymore to the great sword. Then like I would have to like level it up and farm all these materials. So I'm still kind of debating like, do I want to switch weapons this late into my playthrough, or do I want to just stick it out with what I got and have another playthrough potentially? That's sort of where my head is. But really been enjoying Elden Ring. It's definitely it was a little challenging jumping back into the game and having to fight Morgott because he wasn't. He's kind of challenging. It definitely makes Margit, which is I guess him, but he's like corrupted or something. Like the first big boss you fight in the game. But they share very similar movesets. I'm kind of confused on the lore in that aspect, but yeah, he made that fight look like a joke. Love the game. Oh yeah. I fought this big dragon out on this like frozen lake. That was sort of cool.
I know which one you're talking about.
That was fun. I did that right before I completed that manor contract. But that was sort of where I stopped exploring because right after I did that contract, I teleported back to the manor and saved right before that lady that you turn in the stuff to. So I'll be fighting Riker tonight.
Cool. Riker.
Besides that, I played a little more Diablo 3. I'm into. Did I mention that last week?
You did.
I played Diablo. Okay.
Deckard Cain. Back.
Stay back. So I'm up to Act 5 now. It's surprising how quickly you can get through the campaign by just like skipping all the enemies and just running through the areas. Like that's what I've been doing in this playthrough.
What are you trying to do exactly?
I'm just trying to get through the story as fast as possible so I can do adventure mode.
Okay.
And so I could have jumped right into adventure mode, but I wanted to sort of experience how the game was. And then like you could just say, oh, well, you're not doing anything. You're just running through all the levels and you're just killing the bosses. I mean, yeah, but I don't know. Like I just wanted to go through the game again to kind of feel how it was, I guess, if that makes sense. But I've only played maybe, I don't know, I want to say 4 or 5 hours, and I've just kind of ran through everything. And I'm level 45 or something, so I'm not low level or anything. I think the max level is 70. But once you complete the story, you can just jump right into adventure mode. And at that point, you can just run like the greater rifts and all the stuff to like farm your set gear and all your legendaries that you need for an actual build in the game. That's sort of my goal is to... What really like spawned me playing D3 was being kind of disappointed with Immortal. Like I've kind of just stopped playing that in general. And it's really just D3, but it's kind of less impressive in every way. So it kind of just inspired me. Like it got me into a Diablo mood. So I wanted to go back to 3 and then obviously, the D4 news has gotten me excited too. So just been in sort of a Diablo mood. And I was really playing that a lot before Elden Ring sort of piqued my interest again. But yeah, I'll probably keep playing some D3 here and there. Not sure how much more I'll play. I kind of got my itch filled. Besides that, I've been playing like a tiny bit of World of Warcraft. I played with a couple of guildies, did a couple dungeons this week, did some achievements the other night. Just like in every expansion they release, there's like these like achievements that you can just do that are, a lot of them are easy to do solos. And they're just like random things in the game. It's like go to every critter in this zone and, pet it, or it can be anything from like, hey, do these few quests that are part of this chain. It'll give you an achievement. It's just random stuff like that. Just something you can do anytime, just to check a box off something, just to have a little, an accomplishment or something. It's just fun to do that. Like, it's late at night, having a few drinks, just chilling out. It's nice to just go in there and check some stuff off. Feels good. Did I play anything else? We played Hunt Showdown, which we talked about.
Yeah.
Which is a great time. I hope we do that again soon. Don't think I have too much more to say about it. But after that, our buddy Zach got into the call and we jumped into some Fortnite because it was the only other thing that I had downloaded that you guys had. And it was fun.
That was fun the other night, yeah.
Game just...
we rode the new roller coaster. I used a new grapple glove, which was sick.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I think our funniest moment is we're trying to get one of these vaults open to get a bunch of loot. We're all standing there trying to open it. And like as soon as the door opens, Jacob just gets blasted in the back of the head and just goes down instantly. We turn around. It's like Spider-Man and Doctor Strange unloading on us down this hallway. And this game makes me laugh all the time just from how absurd it is. But Spider-Man slaughtered all of us. It was hilarious.
Goodness. Yeah, the game is just, it's something else, man.
Every time we play it, I'm just endlessly impressed with what they've pulled off with Fortnite. It's just completely insane in so many ways, but also just very well developed.
Yeah, and I think like it just plays so well now with their new engine. It feels so good to play now. It's one of the best games out there by far.
I've been playing on PS5 and it feels great. They even added DualSense features with like the adaptive triggers and everything. That's pretty cool. I
want to try it on PS5. Do you have your account? Like, can you account share to, like, would I have my stuff on PC?
Yeah, I just use your Epic Games account. But Epic clearly has obviously endless loads of cash to invest in this game and a pretty substantial development team. So they're cranking out a lot of content pretty frequently. And I'm just amazed at like how the map evolves and what they add to it. Like the roller coaster alone, I rode for like 5 straight minutes and I didn't even finish the thing, and had all these cool mechanics and like gravitational elements and the grapple gun attached to your ball. You're riding around. It's just, I don't know how they come up with this stuff and how they implement it so well, but it's very impressive.
I think the no build mode is like it that update made me want to actually play the game sometimes. Like without that, I would never want to play. Heck no.
Yeah, I'm down to like just hop in and mess around for a few matches every now and then.
Like just that update alone makes me feel like I have like the smallest bit of chance to win. It's still not very big.
Zach and I have won a few times.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah. So it's a fun little game. I shouldn't say little. It's a fun, massive, very successful game. But yeah, Fortnite's been a good time.
That's all I played though this week.
Cool. I didn't play much else other than Fortnite. I played a little of Uncharted 4 on PS5. Still looks really good. Plays really well. Runs very smoothly. Love the DualSense features they added. It has not grabbed me like I had hoped it would. I really just wanted to check it out because it was like a very minor upgrade on PS. Or not minor upgrade, but small investment to upgrade to the PS5 version. So I did that. And I surprisingly remember many of the story beats in Uncharted 4. So I haven't been like reminded of anything that I'd forgotten about so far, but I've played the first few hours and it's been cool. But it has also reminded me that Naughty Dog really stand above many other studios in their storytelling in games. Love them or hate them, like their level of storytelling is just so far beyond many other studios. And Uncharted 4 is reminding me of that. So I think another example in recent years has been Santa Monica with God of War, of course, is phenomenal. And that brings me to a question I wanted to bring up, maybe before we get into our news, Jacob, is your biggest gaming convictions today.
Wow.
One or more. I think we originally called it our most controversial opinions, but we're thinking conviction is a more appropriate term for this, because I have one in mind that stems off of God of War. Okay. And I'd also like to hear yours.
I'm not ready yet.
Okay. Here's mine. I have a feeling in my gut that God of War Ragnarok is going to disappoint a bit.
No, don't say that.
I've had it for quite a while. There's just something off about this game, Jacob, and I can't put my finger on it. One of the things being that they have the new guy directing, who I don't think's ever directed a game of this scope before.
Yeah.
Which sometimes that works out. Most times it doesn't. I also feel like Barlog has been weird. I don't know what his deal is again, I don't know the man's life. I don't know him personally. I just go based on what I see on social media. But over the years while this game's been in development, something hasn't seemed quite right with that man. And I don't know what it is. I don't mean like in a bad way, just something feels off. And I know he's not directing, but he's still involved. I know they have a team of writers. I know Alana Pierce is one of them.
Really?
And maybe after the game comes out, we'll know more specifically on what she's contributed. So she obviously hasn't given me too many details on the writing process, but she has a lot to say on just game development, having worked on this game for the last few years. And then obviously what little we've seen, which I'm one of those guys that like agrees, like it looks very similar to 2018's God of War, which isn't a bad thing because 2018's God of War is still excellent. But I know a lot of people hope for, I think Colin Moriarty and the guys over on Sacred Symbols have made good points recently when they talk about Sony releases and delays and first party studios for Sony, is that people have a much higher expectation of them going into this generation because last generation was such a massive success for their first party studios that people expect even more from them. And that's only natural with everything in life, especially in entertainment. I'm on edge about this one, Jacob. And that's the thing. I've almost prepared myself for disappointment, and I don't even think it's going to be a bad game. I just think it may be more of the same. Mm-hmm. Granted, Guerrilla is a completely different studio, but Horizon Forbidden West, although very beautiful and a massive improvement over the original Horizon, it still, at the end of the day, isn't totally dissimilar from the first one. And I think that's why, thus far, I've been pretty disappointed with it. So that is my one gaming conviction for now, Jacob, is that God of War Ragnarok has major potential to disappoint.
It's also tough, too, because like these games, these Sony sequels are taking so long to come out as well, too. Like they're taking over 2 years in a lot of cases to make the sequels. And, at that point, not only do you want to see the continuation of the story, but you also want to see what is all the new toys that you guys have been working on for the last couple of years. And a lot of times it's not a whole lot in some cases.
I think the best thing they could do is give Kratos a whole new weapon. Just like how cool the Leviathan axe was in the original game. Like, give us a new weapon that is that cool, but something completely different. And even like the Blades of Chaos and everything.
That could be cool.
Adds like a new tool to his arsenal.
Like in a I was going to say Diablo 3, God of War 3, where they have I think there's 4 or 5 different weapons that he has access to. So they have definitely done something like that before. So I think that could definitely work. And obviously in the newer God of War, like the weapons are much more fleshed out. There's much more you can do with them. I think they each have their own talent trees, right? Or something like that. It's been a while, sorry. Yeah, I definitely think that would really add a fresh new take on how to play the game, for sure.
Yeah, and clearly there's a lot of potential with the narrative as well, just based on how the first one played out, how it ends. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of potential there. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but they've set up what seems to be a really interesting story. I'm still anticipating it, but that's why it's not really on my most anticipated list, because I just have like an off feeling about it. That. So until we see like a really substantial state of play on it in a release date set, I may feel a bit more comfortable. But as of right now, my conviction is Ragnarok's going to disappoint. And I hope I eat my words, Jacob. I hope I've never been more wrong in my life.
I do too. I hope you're so wrong.
That's how I feel.
Because it is one of my most anticipated games, 100%. Like I've talked about many times how much I love the original not the original God of War, but the 2018 God of War. I think it's almost a perfect game, almost. But a gaming conviction from me. Here's a hot take. You ready?
Hit me, Jacob.
I think gaming is dying. I think the medium is dying. And it's new ideas in terms of...
Can I pause you for one more moment, Jacob? I want to bring in Level's question that he sent us on Twitter. I think it'll plug into this really nicely. Level wrote in and says, or if I want to be more specific, L3V3L. X. Remakes and remasters of games. I almost feel like the gaming industry has ran out of original ideas, much like the movie industry. Any thoughts on this? Also, if you could pick one series to be brought back from the dead, what would it be? For me, it'd be the Fear series. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's his question. Continue, Jacob.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think definitely since we've I think most certainly since the Xbox One and PS4 generation, like we have just been getting so many remasters and remakes. Like for every, I don't know, it seems like for every one original IP we get 4 or 5 remasters of something. And that's not necessarily bad, I don't think. Like it's giving people more to play, even though they've already played it before potentially. I don't know. I'd like a, and I don't. So I also have had this thought too. Like, is it because I'm getting older and is gaming becoming less interesting to me?
Older and more jaded.
Like
you old man. You're also bald, Jacob. Now.
Maybe all of the I've shaved off all the excitement of my youth. I don't know.
You're an old man.
Maybe it's just because
Aren't you about to turn 30?
Yeah, I am actually.
July 27th?
I'm going to be 30 pretty soon, which is kind of terrifying.
Jacob, I'm followed right behind you.
Not too far behind. Oh, you're over a year behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you just turned 29. But yeah, it's like that idea of, am I just too worried about other things in my life? And am I just too distracted? And I don't really think that's the case. I worry that like we're just not going to get new and exciting things anymore. And it kind of worries me because I liked gaming so much as a teenager and as a kid. Like it was a big part of my life. It was always something that I could fall back into when I was, feeling sad or upset about something, or if I was just bored on a Friday night. It was always something that I had, or not that I had to do, but I could do. That I could distract myself with by doing something that I really enjoyed. And now, I'll get home from work on a Friday night and I'll sit in front of my computer for a second. I'll be like, man, like there's just nothing that I want to play. There's nothing that I want to do. I'm just sitting here and I'm just so bored. And I'm just going to go get off my computer and watch a show because I don't know what else to do. And I've felt like this for several months now. And for a while I've been playing a lot of WoW, and I think like playing games with friends is definitely nice. Like it gives you this, like, not that it I just think a lot of games are a better experience with friends, which is no secret to anybody. And I think that sort of experience can transcend a particular feeling about a game or playing a game by yourself at all. But I don't know. To me, it just seems like we've been playing the same games for a long time. Like we've been playing Call of Duties, we've been playing Halos, we've been playing Fortnites. Like it just feels like all the popular games that are popular right now came out 6 or 7 years ago or something. Like it just seems like we're not getting anything new. So I guess I just want to hear your thoughts about that a little bit.
I'd toss in sequels to the remakes and remasters conversation. I'll start with that. Everyone has heard the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything in life nowadays especially is inspired by something to some degree. So new IP are always coming, typically from indie studios. I think the indie space is always worth looking into. And I think SkillUp actually, this is kind of relevant to the conversation, just recently put out like his top 25 most anticipated indie games. And admittedly, like indie games rarely ever draw me in enough to really want to commit to them and finish them. But there is still a ton of creativity in the indie space. And the reason why we see less creativity in the AAA space is because, again, kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier, money talks, and nostalgia is a hell of a drug, especially when it comes to entertainment. Companies always invest in what they anticipate will make the most money. And I can't blame them because at the end of the day, everything is about money, sadly, and especially when it comes to entertainment. Thankfully, some publishers allow studios to really go for it with new ideas. Like it's awesome that Sony back in the day now allowed Guerrilla to go from Killzone to something like Horizon. And although Horizon was in some ways derivative of many other IP that have come before, there were original ideas in that game that no one had really ever seen before. Mm-hmm. It is more rare, but there are cases where new ideas come to life and are successful. Yeah. In regard to remakes and remasters, it's kind of mixed for me because we have had some really excellent remakes and remasters. I think the Blue Point remaster with the big Titans. Why can't I remember?
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yes, that is a phenomenal remake. Shadow of the Colossus. Everything Blue Point does is great. Demon Souls, Shadow of the Colossus, most recently. And I think about the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. 3 not as much, but especially 2 has been outstanding. And even Resident Evil sequels recently have been really good. Both Biohazard and Village are great sequels in that franchise. And it looks like the Dead Space remake is also going to be really, really good. That being said, some don't always work out. We look at like the Prince of Persia Sands of Time situation. That seems to be a complete catastrophe. But from my perspective, remakes and remasters aren't always a bad thing. At least for video games in recent years, they've been very good. Now, there have been remakes of older movies that have been pretty terrible. One thing I want to comment on with like sequels and remasters and remakes is that there are still original ideas being put out there. And I'm actually, in my own line of work, very creatively energized right now from seeing Everything Everywhere All at Once. The Northman from Robert Eggers is another great example. And even Top Gun being a legacy sequel is the most relevant example to this conversation because while it is a sequel, it was over 30 years in the making. It is objectively a better film in many ways. And those three properties have like really creatively energized me. Thankfully, we're about to jump into a project in a few weeks where we get to expel all that creative energy, which we're stoked about. Entertainment overall, I don't think it's dying. I just think in the mainstream world of gaming, it seems like it's lacking creativity just because publishers invest in what's going to make the most money. And I can't really fault them for that.
You make a really good point because I very rarely ever hear about indie studios and what they're working on. And I'm never searching for, hey, what are the newest and greatest things that indie developers are creating? Like, what are the new hottest games that are, because you don't even get to see all of them. Like, you might see some that explode on Steam, but like, even then, like you really just don't see these games. And I don't know what the answer is to discover more. So it's kind of frustrating.
Thankfully, most sequels in recent years have been improvements on the originals. I know, like, there's the age-old comparison to think of Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2. Everyone uses that to compare sequels these days. And I'm thinking mostly Naughty Dog right now, but every Uncharted game, I feel like, was an improvement on the last. Hopefully that will be the case for God of War. Horizon, its sequel, is an improvement. It hasn't blown my mind necessarily from a gameplay standpoint, but it is technically an improvement on the original. And I think Halo 1 through 3 is a near perfect trilogy. I think those are all improvements on previous games. And it's always great to return to a series that has been improved. And you get to spend more time with characters you love and gameplay you love. So sequels aren't always a bad thing. And I think in recent years, remakes and remasters haven't been a bad thing. They're just that's what's like kind of in your face, whereas all the more creative ideas, I wouldn't say they're necessarily in the shadows, they're just not talked about as much. They're not really in the mainstream conversation. Yeah. So I don't think it's dying. I mean, the gaming industry is more lucrative than ever today. And I think almost every genre that I've had my eyes on seems to be doing really, really well, but we're not seeing as much innovation right now, but there are those properties out there that are really exploring new ideas that have a lot of potential to be something that's more influential. You think about even like FromSoftware's formula has obviously influenced so many franchises over the years. It's only a matter of time till another studio comes up with some new gameplay mechanic or idea that really influences more things going forward. So I think it's a very valid conviction for sure.
Also, another thing is to keep in mind that I have to keep reminding myself is that COVID was a thing for a couple of years, and I think that really slowed down a lot of development on a lot of games.
For sure, yeah, that's something to consider that I had totally forgotten about.
Overwatch 2, Diablo 4, God of War, Breath of the Wild 2. Like, there's just so many games that like I'm really excited about that just have not come out yet, and they've just had a really long development time. So I don't know. So, I'm just getting impatient. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But there are cool things coming in the AAA space. 100%.
First up, Call of Duty. Let's go.
I hope it's good. I wouldn't say I'm excited about it, but I'm excited for the new Warzone. I'm excited to see what that's like.
I mean, as you know, Jacob, I am a lifelong shooter fan. It's arguably my favorite genre. There's something about it I really love. But I mean, I love many genres, but shooters have always like really spoken to me. So anyway, Jacob, I think that brings us to the news. You ready to jump in?
Yeah, man.
The new FromSoftware game is apparently nearing the end of development, Jacob. There are rumors that it is a Armored Core sequel or reboot. Let's see. This is from Matt Kim on IGN. He says, in an interview with Japanese gaming website 4Gamer, FromSoftware and Elden Ring director, forgive me, those of you who know how to pronounce it or correctly pronounce his name, I think it's Hidetaka Miyazaki, I always just call him Miyazaki, revealed that the studio's next game is already in the final stages of development. According to the interview, the publication asked Miyazaki back in 2018 around the launch of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, how FromSoftware's 2 unannounced games were shaping up. One unannounced game would go on to become Elden Ring, but this other unannounced game is still in the works, and according to Miyazaki, development is currently in its final stages. No word on what it might be, but one of the high-profile leaks around FromSoftware suggests the studio is working on a new Armored Core game, company's mech battle simulator. Miyazaki himself revealed that he is already working on yet another game as director, with plans to, quote, to work on a more abstract fantasy than anything we've done in the past. Interview concludes Miyazaki sharing along with these new titles more updates for Elden Ring are in the works, considering each of the past Souls games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne received fairly substantial DLC campaigns. We can likely expect the same for Elden Ring. Jacob, the main thing I wanted to bring up about this, I've never played an Armored Core game, so I'd have to look into what they're like and if I'd even be interested in something like that today. But what is, let's say, like with the, he mentions a new fantasy, abstract fantasy than anything done in the past. It's safe to assume it'll be more in line with their Soul series. What's a setting? We can start with fantasy, but I was going to ask just even broader than that. Like, what's a setting and time period you'd like to see FromSoftware tackle that they haven't tackled yet? Because everything's been very like period piece based. Everything they've done thus far, whether it be medieval, feudal Japan, gaslit London, Bloodborne, which is one of my favorite time periods generally. Is it Victorian London is the term I was looking for. What's a setting you'd like to see them tackle? And it's difficult too because other studios have taken the Souls formula and put it into their own ideas. Like you think of that, what's that like sci-fi Souls game that's kind of successful? I can't remember the name of it. You're like in a mech suit.
I don't know if I know what you're talking about for that one.
I think you would recognize it. I can't remember the name of it, but they've basically done the FromSoftware formula in like a sci-fi setting already.
I mean, I'm thinking of stuff like Neo. Like they had Sekiro. I think you have to assume with a FromSoftware game that it's still going to so in every FromSoftware game, there's like these tones. There's these grotesque, like interesting boss designs. Like there's these creepy things in every one of their games. So you would have to assume that that's going to be, I would assume that that's going to be carried on despite whatever setting they're going to be making a game in. What would be something that I think would be interesting? That's challenging.
It's tricky too because their games are primarily melee focused, so that sort of limits the ideas.
What if there was something modern, like that took place in like a urban city, and it still had these like grotesque, like maybe there's some sort of like infection that's been let loose into a city, and it's like caused everything to mutate and just take on different forms, and it would sort of create these grotesque enemy designs and stuff. That's sort of the first place that my mind goes to. I definitely like that he working on a more abstract fantasy game than they've done in the past. Because
that's hard to imagine that after Elden Ring.
I know.
How could you go even more abstract than that?
That makes me think like maybe it's just going to be very fantasy tropey. Like it's just going to be. I would honestly like to see them just do something that they haven't done before. I think that would be interesting to see. Like, what if they made a game where the combat wasn't like how it always is? Like, what would that be like? Or what if they like built off Sekiro and then like instead of making it about parrying, they make it all about, I don't know, like shooting a bow or something, or like dodging. Like, I don't know. It could be anything. But just like taking one aspect of like their games and just making a whole game out of it, sort of idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't really know what to imagine they could do outside of what they've been doing because it's still wildly successful. I still think even having played a lot of Elden Ring, and Elden Ring's combat is really good. I still think Sekiro's my favorite style of combat they've explored thus far. I'd like to see an iteration on that. I'd like to see them take that even further.
I wouldn't say that Elden Ring's bad. I think it's good.
Oh yeah, Elden Ring's great. They included aspects of Sekiro's combat in Elden Ring. It isn't quite as deep in regard to parrying and stuff with the majority of the weapons, but there are elements there for sure.
Elden Ring's strength is in its variety of combat. It's not that it's like a perfection of combat, I guess. Although I would say what they provide is pretty intuitive, and I don't know how you can make it much better being what it is. Like the dodging's pretty intuitive. Like everything, like nothing feels bad to do. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think by this point, they've definitely mastered their formula. I mean, Elden Ring is just an unbelievable achievement in so many ways.
Yeah.
So going forward, I don't know how they're going to top it, but everything they've done so far, they've topped the last thing they've done. And I know people have their favorites from software. I definitely have aspects of other from software games that are my favorites, but it's really difficult to imagine where they could go after Elden Ring. If Elden Ring didn't exist, I could probably come up with like more ideas. But after Elden Ring, it just that game to this day, even though I haven't played it in a few weeks, continues to blow my mind every time I play it.
What if they made a horror game? Horror could be cool.
I would argue that all their games are horror to a degree.
Yeah, a little bit. You're right.
With the grotesque bosses and monsters you encounter. Especially, I think what comes to mind right now are the creatures in Volcano Manor, those little guys that crawl around and kill you instantly when they jump on you. Those guys are terrifying. That's straight out of like Silent Hill is what it feels like.
I didn't know they did that. One hasn't jumped on me yet.
Yeah, I made the mistake once. I'm like, I wonder if I can parry these guys, and one jumped on me and just sucked the life out of me instantly. So it's scary too because they're usually in the dark and they all rush you at one time.
Yep. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what that room is.
Bloodborne's very much on the line of horror.
Yeah, I remember being scared at moments in Bloodborne, but I also think that might have been because I was just terrified to play that game because like it was my first Souls game, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I killed every enemy in that game. I killed every single enemy because I just wanted to complete everything. But I don't even come close to doing that in Elden Ring. You'd be crazy to do that in Elden Ring. There's so many enemies.
Yeah, I killed every boss in Dark Souls 3, Demon Souls, Sekiro, and I definitely probably won't achieve that in Elden Ring, but I wanted it to be a goal of mine going forward, I kill every boss in each Souls game. So I owe it to myself to go back to Bloodborne because I didn't even realize that was possible to miss bosses because it was my first Souls game. I beat it and I was like, oh, and then I later found out that I missed like 5 or 6 bosses. So I'm like, along with everyone else, still waiting for like a 60 FPS update. I'd even take like a full remaster at this point. Why not?
That'd be so good.
Maybe someday. Hopefully one of the several FromSoftware games in development is something to do with Bloodborne.
We can hope. We can dream.
We shall see. Jacob, we spoke quite a bit on microtransactions last week regarding Immortal. And one of the things I'd mentioned was it can be frustrating for microtransactions to be implemented into an existing franchise. Now, Halo Infinite's one thing for sure. But this past week, 343 announced that they're probably bringing microtransactions to the Master Chief Collection. The story comes from Ryan Leston on IGN. He says, 343 Industries has revealed that it's currently exploring adding microtransactions to the game, allowing players to purchase Spartan points, currently called Season Points, to unlock gear and customizations they may have missed. For players who are new to MCC or who may not have dedicated much time specifically to unlocking items during the seasonal updates, or are simply completionists looking to catch the last outstanding items they need, we are internally exploring a potential new feature for the future in the form of purchasable Spartan points. Currently, items are unlocked with Season Points. They say, we are happy with the current system of how players earn Spartan points by completing challenges and leveling up through play. This would be an optional additive alternative for players who might find the vast scope of content to be an intimidating amount of playtime and want to get ahead or skip the grind, and maybe want to grab specific items they want or have all of our favorites. The option of purchasing Spartan points is an added extra. You don't have to do it. However, the thinking is that it will allow new players to catch up or older players to grab specific items they want without having to grind for them. We wanted to inform you of this exploration in advance and provide assurance that Spartan points would be an additive feature. We will have more information to share about this in the future. So my initial thought on this, Jacob, is much in line with what I had to say last week. Considering these are all cosmetic upgrades, I have zero issue with it. I can get why players would be a little upset, thinking, oh, like I grinded and like unlocked all this gear, I actually played for this. But at the end of the day, it is just cosmetic, and it doesn't bother me because it isn't like how it used to be. Like unlocking certain I mentioned this in my Halo Infinite review for COG, is that why I'm disappointed with what 343 is doing with their cosmetics with now MCC and Infinite is that there's no story behind it anymore. In Halo 3, to get Hayabusa, you had to like collect all the skulls. To get Recon, before they released it for free for everyone, you had to do a lot of crazy stuff. I remember Andy worked his ass off to get Recon back in the day. So there was always like a cool story behind your unlocks and achievements in past Halo games, whereas now it's just a battle pass. It's just, oh, I played this many hours, now I have all this stuff. I have the same stuff as this guy because he played just as many hours as me. It's not nearly as interesting anymore.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me at all that I've played countless hours of MCC and I've locked a lot of cool cosmetics, and then someone else comes in next week or in the near future, if they decide to do this, and just buys everything they want. It doesn't bother me at all because they're just cosmetics, and I didn't have to do anything particular other than just playing the game to unlock them. Yeah. It doesn't bother me that development studios want to do this. As long as it isn't game breaking and as long as it doesn't give anyone a gameplay advantage, I have zero problem with cosmetic microtransactions, because studios make a ton of money, publishers make a ton of money, and I don't think it harms anyone who doesn't want to, like they said, doesn't want to invest in these options. Admittedly, I don't know if I'm actually going to pay for anything, but there have been some items that I've missed because I haven't been able to play as consistently as I'd like, that I wouldn't mind having like a cool BR skin that I missed out on. Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't bother me. That being said, I've been very convicted with Infinite that I haven't spent a dime on cosmetic microtransactions in the game, just because MCC is like a legacy collection that is a beautiful thing to me. I'm glad it exists, but I almost care less about what they do with microtransactions in that versus Infinite, because Infinite is supposedly the 10-year future of Halo, which we don't know if they're actually going to commit to those 10 years now because the game's not doing very well. But if it is the 10-year future, I would have rather seen a completely different system with unlocks and cosmetics and many other features of the game that I've gotten into before. So Infinite I care more about and don't ever intend to spend any money on outside of just the Battle Pass.
Yeah.
But MCC, I'm kind of like, whatever, like get as wacky and crazy as you want with that game. Those are my thoughts, Jacob. How do you feel about hearing about that? I just think it was kind of a good branch of what we talked about last week.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts. As a WoW enjoyer, gear and like cosmetics have always sort of been an extension of like renown. So to get cool gear in something like WoW, especially more how it used to be, like in the early days of WoW, you had to complete very challenging bits of content, right? Like you would have to complete the raid, the new raid on the highest difficulty, or you would have to run the highest tier of dungeons, or you would have to be a certain rank in PvP modes. And to reflect that achievement, you would have really cool looking gear. Usually, sometimes they miss the mark. Sometimes the gear doesn't look cool enough. And as time has gone on, they've added gear to stores and they've added mounts to stores. And unfortunately, oftentimes those pieces of gear, those sets, those mounts, even, they look cooler than games or items that you can get in the game. And I think that's I think that's something a game shouldn't do. And I'm not saying Halo is doing this, but there should always be really cool sets that you can earn in game. I think that's important for people that can't afford $20 skins or, gun skins or whatever it is. I think it's always important to have very cool things, and they don't even have to be like, things that are hard to get all the time, depending what game it is. It just like there needs to be things that you can work towards in a game. I think that's really important, especially for someone like me, because I like, seeing, I like playing a game for an extended period of time. I like seeing my own improvement, and I like working towards different goals in a game because it gives me, purpose in playing something. I think a lot of people feel like that too. So I don't know if you know this, but is Halo, like, are these just skins that used to be in the game that you can't access anymore because they were season based? Like, I'm confused as to what they're putting back in.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, in Infinite, for example, their Battle Pass system's a little different, whereas I completed the Season 1 Battle Pass completely, so I have everything from that Battle Pass. But Zach, for example, didn't complete it before Season 2 came out. So Zach now has the option. He has both Battle Passes. He can either grind Season 2 or continue grinding Season 1 at will. He can just switch back and forth.
You can't do them at the same time?
Which I think is a great system. No.
Yeah, they don't go away. That's fine.
Yeah, so and that's a pretty new idea as far as I'm aware. But MCC, I don't think has that feature. So I think their point in this is saying like, oh, like granted, I feel like it'd be better if they were like, hey, we're just going to bring back all the battle passes and you can work toward any of them whenever you want, like you can in Infinite, rather than saying like, well, here's all the old items, now you got to buy them instead of playing for them.
I guess it isn't it.
Unless I'm misinterpreting what this guy has written, that's what it sounds like to me, rather than just going back to old seasons and grinding for them like you couldn't before. It almost sounds like they're just adding all that content back in, but you can just, you have to buy them with Spartan points. Or maybe you can go back to older battle passes. I need to look that up and find out, but they're just giving you the option. Instead of grinding them, you can just buy them if you prefer, which still doesn't bother me. It's weird to me that someone would just want to buy stuff and not play the game, but I mean, people are free to do with their money what they want to do with it.
So are they doing this in
who am I to say you can't spend your money on that?
Are they doing this in both games, or just Master Chief Collection, like the Spartan points?
There is a similar in-game currency that you can earn in Infinite. It's just you earn it very slowly. So it would take you like a lifetime to unlock enough to like just buy something with in-game currency.
So I guess my question in MCC, are there skins that you could get that went away? Or is this just a system that you can unlock skins through real money instead of playing the game? Are you understanding what I'm asking?
I'm looking right now.
Because like as far as I'm concerned, like they didn't add new content to Master Chief Collection, right? So I'm assuming these are just skins that you've always been able to earn, but you can just pay for them now. And if that's the case, I guess it just kind of depends what you had to do to earn the skin for me. Like if you had to like do something that was really, really, really hard, and now you can just unlock it by paying $20, I don't know how I feel about that. But at the same time, it's an old game. They're all old games now.
And it's also just cosmetic.
Right.
So in MCC, you haven't had to do anything to unlock skins in multiplayer.
Okay.
It's just play the game and unlock it through the battle pass.
I didn't know that had a battle pass. I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
So if it's just battle pass based, I don't care about that at all. Yeah. That's battle passes are cool. I like battle passes. Like I like how you can, like you're paying for something.
I think they're much better than loot boxes. At least you can see the track of unlocking the gear you want.
And I think who makes the game? I forgot their name. 343. I think they have the best battle pass out of anybody. I think it's maybe not like what's in it, but I think just the fact that you can go back and work on one that you already bought, like that's awesome. Because most people, you have 30 days or you have like however long it lasts, and if you don't get all the stuff in it before it runs out, you just wasted your money. Like you don't get it. So I think it's very progressive, I guess, that 343 is doing this sort of system. But that's without even knowing like if they have good stuff in their battle pass to begin with. Like I have no clue. But overall, I think battle passes are fine. From what I understand about 343 and their MCC Spartan points thing, I think it's fine. I don't really see any issue here, I don't think.
It doesn't bother me either. And the reason I wanted to include it is just because it was in line with what we said about bringing them into an existing franchise. Mm-hmm. So
I think it's always
definitely a surprise.
It is a little surprising, yeah. I don't think it's too surprising because they might be hurting a little bit right now and they're looking for other ways to make some money.
I think it also has to do with Infinite because people have been complaining since day one, even before the game launched, about Infinite's microtransactions. Mm-hmm. But people, from my point of view, have very clearly been investing in these microtransactions because every match I play in Infinite, people have items that are only available through the shop. Really? People are buying them. So I can't fault 343 at all for implementing them into MCC because they're going to make even more money. Yeah. And the question about it is like, where does all this money go? I know, of course, goes to development costs, but do certain like higher ups in development studios get bonuses based on income, or does the publisher give them more benefits? Like, I don't know exactly what the overall, of course, the monetary gain from microtransactions, just generally speaking, is a good thing for studios, but what exactly is the main benefit on an individual basis?
You'll never know the answer to that question.
I know that's what I'm most curious about. I mean, if it's like as pure as I'd like to think it is, like, oh, this is just budget to not only just, of course, keep our staff employed, but invest it into our next update or next IP or next sequel, whatever it may be, just all the more beneficial financially going forward. But
so
I don't know.
Which are you more likely to spend money in? A game that is, you pay $60 for a game and there's a shop and there's cool skins for like $20, or you have a free game that has the same shop and has maybe less features than a $60 game, but it has some cool skins. Which game do you think you'd be more likely to spend money in for skins? Assuming that you buy skins.
In that situation, neither.
Neither.
A idea I could probably answer a bit more effectively would be Infinite's case, where Infinite launched with many features that were either broken or lacking entirely. Granted, it's a free-to-play game. Great, cool. Anyone can have access to it. But at the end of the day, there's very minimal content. Even to this very day, like there's hardly any content in the game that the Halo franchise, Halo fans especially, have been accustomed to having at day one with their games. And it's amazing how many features that technically exist but hardly function in Infinite. It's just inexcusable. So I would have rather paid $70 for a complete, well-developed package any day rather than have it be free to play and have content just be drip fed to everyone over years. It's just, that drives me crazy.
I think I'm more inclined to agree with that too. And unfortunately, I don't think that's where we're headed anymore. I think the way Halo sort of came out, we might see even more of that.
I don't know, man. Again, money talks, and you look at the success of Elden Ring. That game was, with the exception of some pretty minor performance issues on various platforms, that game pretty much came out entirely complete. And I mean, it helps that it's just an excellent game in general, but with very minor hiccups, that game launched and was wildly successful.
It's a very good point.
So there's a lot of merit to a game and a studio having a really good reputation for their games coming out complete with very few bugs and a lot of rich content on day one, and single player as well.
Definitely.
Notably with Elden Ring. So
Elden Ring proves that you can still make an incredible single player game and sell tons and tons of copies.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that you think about disastrous launches like Cyberpunk and rough launches like Infinite will send the message to publishers and development studios that it's just ultimately unacceptable to release games in states like that. I realize like there's a lot more to it than just like, oh, it's not done, you can't release it. There's like investors and all the other complex issues that go into game development and businesses and money. So it's not as simple as just, oh, wait to put it out because it's not done yet. I know there's more to it than that, but hopefully the games that could have potentially made a lot more money and been much more successful had they been complete at launch will send the message to studios going forward. Again, I know we mentioned COVID played a role in some of this as well, but going forward, that won't be the case with many others, hopefully.
Yeah.
But Jacob, I think that covers microtransactions for a bit on this podcast. Talk to me about Overwatch 1. I mean, again, they may even be relevant in this conversation. We'll see. But Overwatch 1 shifting into Overwatch 2 upon release.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so basically Overwatch 1 is sort of turning into Overwatch 2, basically. So as soon as Overwatch 2 comes out on October 4th, which is when it goes live, you will not be able to access Overwatch 1 anymore as it is now. It's going to turn into 2. So, I mean, if you buy 1 now, you're going to have access to 2, at least the multiplayer anyway. They're going to be charging single player later on because it's not done. But I sort of just want to talk about this for a second and sort of read some stuff from this article and see how we felt about it. So let's see here. We're using the term early access to indicate that this is just the start of many new things coming to the game, Keller says. And Aaron Keller is the game director after Jeff Kaplan stepped away. And he says, we're launching with new heroes, maps, and features, but there are even more of those coming seasonally. Every 9 weeks, which actually surprised me. And we recently released a roadmap detailing some of the content with a new hero coming in season 1 and 2, with a new map in season 2. Additionally, large pieces of the game that have always been a part of the vision for Overwatch 2 will be releasing to the game as part of the live service, including the launch of PvE campaign next year. When Overwatch 2 launches on October 4th, it will be a replacement for the current live service. Other things that they announced through this were they're completely getting rid of loot boxes. They're doing a battle pass now. So no more gambling loot boxes for people that are upset about that kind of stuff. And I assume there's going to be a way just to purchase skins too. I have to assume that. Because there's a lot of existing skins in the game. So I'm assuming there's going to be a way to buy currency to unlock those. which I think is okay because it's going to be a free game now. So they have to make money somehow. So I think this is completely fine. But obviously this means there's going to be no more access to Overwatch 5v5 or 6v6 gameplay like it was originally back in, when did the game come out? 2016, 2017? I can't remember.
2016 sounds right to me.
Yeah. But all your progress is going to carry over to the new game. So all the, your account rank, your time played, all your skins, any currency you have, I assume, is just going to completely transition over.
So I own the game on PC, so that means I'm jumping into Overwatch 2 like day one, no problem.
Yeah, you got it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would love to see this game kind of have a resurgence, not necessarily on the level of like how it used to be. I doubt it'll ever reach that again.
Probably not.
But I really had a ton of fun with Overwatch back in the day when all of us were playing for a while.
It's such a fun game.
I would love to enjoy it again because I think it's such a fun team-based game. And now, that being said, I haven't looked into literally anything for Overwatch 2.
Mm-hmm.
I've not heard anything. I haven't looked into it. So it'll all be pretty fresh for me.
Sure.
I'm just hoping it will bring us back in and be something like really fun to play because I just love team-based competition. This is another random thought I have while we're on the subject of like team-based games like this. I think the reason I especially love shooters today is because I think we've talked about this a couple of times where we like to have a sense of accomplishment in games. And you can definitely get that out of single player games and like RPGs and stuff. But the reason why I'm more drawn to investing more time in shooters rather than something, although excellent, like Persona 5 is because my conviction playing Persona 5, like I've said, was all these things I'm doing in game, I could literally be doing in real life right now. So I had this weird problem playing it. Whereas in a shooter, it's almost like a sport. Like I think of it like playing a game of basketball or pickleball or soccer or something. It's like you're playing a competitive sport. And the sense of accomplishment is overcoming the enemy team. And they're like bite-sized experiences. You can play like a match of Call of Duty or a match of Halo in like under 10 minutes. And I get one or two in and I'm like, I feel like I accomplished something by like wiping out a team or barely winning a match is like just, especially when you're playing with friends and like healthy competition is very satisfying and has that sense of accomplishment for me. Mm-hmm. And that's why something like Overwatch attracts me and why Overwatch 2 also attracts me because I love team-based competitive experiences, especially as a man pushing 30. So when I sit down to play a game, I want that sense of accomplishment, and I get that most from competitive games, notably shooters. Mm-hmm. So I really hope Overwatch 2 delivers.
I do too. I've been looking for a new Overwatch 2 is not going to be new, I guess, but I haven't really been into a shooter in quite a while, to be honest. I don't think I've really been into one since... Gosh, probably when I stopped playing Apex. I think I stopped playing Apex and Warzone around the same time, which is well over, might be a couple years ago now. Like since then, I haven't really been playing shooters at all. So it would be nice to sort of look forward to one.
Well, do this with me, Jacob. While we anticipate the release of Modern Warfare 2 and Overwatch, why don't you join me in a bit more hunt along the way?
I'd love that. I'd love that.
I'd love to be in a scary cave with you, hiding from zombies and monsters and enemy hunters any day of the week.
And we have to eat one of our limbs to survive because we have no food.
Mm-hmm. Whatever it takes, man. You know, it's always a good time is playing hunt. It's best. You haven't experienced this yet. The best hunt experience is when you're playing at night in real life and you're playing at night in game. It's creepiest and most interesting at night because it's harder to see people. And it's scarier with a good glass of bourbon, dude. Playing Hunt Showdown at night is the best. Yeah. You know, we talked about our old Diablo Tavern experience in our old apartment. You can get a similar vibe with Hunt Showdown at night.
Okay. We'll have to try that.
Hit me up anytime, man.
Can you only have 2 people on a team? Like, is it only teams of 2?
You can have up to 3, but I think the game's better experienced 2s versus 3s. They added 3s because it was like highly demanded, but like hardly anyone plays 3s.
Gotcha. Nice.
Overwatch 1 did come out in 2016, by the way, May 24th, 2016.
What a good time that was. I loved that time so much. Although I was playing on the PS4 instead of PC. So it's a little more difficult.
We eventually grew up and got onto the right platform.
Yep. That's crazy, though. I've had my PC, I think I got it that year. Or it might have been the next year. But
you said Overwatch is what kind of encouraged you to finally dive in, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That and
It is amazing the night and day difference experience on controller versus PC with a lot of shooters.
Yeah.
I still think Call of Duty is an excellent console experience, but I'll never go back from PC on Call of Duty after playing on PC.
Yeah, it's like controllers never felt bad for me because I played them for so long. Mouse and keyboard just feels so much more intuitive to me.
And Halo, it's interesting with Halo. Master Chief Collection, I play even better on mouse and keyboard, but Infinite, I think, is a better controller experience. Mm-hmm. But MCC is also still a very good controller experience. So Halo is still kind of like in between, because I think it can be experienced very well on both PC and controller.
Yeah.
Some games are night and day better on PC. Like Doom Eternal, I can't imagine playing on a controller. So that's one of my favorite shooters of all time, easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doom's great.
Anyway, Jacob, that brings us to AskIOG.
Oh, man.
AskIOG is the part of the show where we answer your questions submitted through any of our social media at ItsObviousGaming, the AskIOG section of our Discord channel, or emailed to us at ItsObviousGaming@gmail.com. And always include the hashtag AskIOG so that we know you want your questions read live on the show. I don't know why I keep saying that, but over the years doing this podcast, we've been doing this for a minute now, Jacob. We would occasionally, back in the day, receive questions that were extremely personal. And I was afraid to read them because I didn't know if they were just sending it as just like a question just generally wanted to answer like over email. Yeah. And then here we are, like a couple of assholes reading like their heart and soul on the internet. So always continue to include that hashtag just in case. Because that being said, like I know some of you've either had conversations with me or with Jacob or with Preston over the years that we're always more than willing to have outside of the podcast. But if you want it specifically on the show, always include that hashtag for us. First one's from Optic Dragon. He says, "Good afternoon, gentlemen. This question is for Jacob. When you had your podcast kick, what were some of your favorites? Also, if the other gents have some, I would love to hear them. Some of my faves are The Yard, The Group Chat, TMG, and Scared to Death. Oh, I'm so happy to see you gents back and making some content. Thank you, Optic Dragon. Always a pleasure, my friend. Let's hear it. Here, Jacob. What podcasts you been into over the years?"
So I don't really listen to many anymore. I gotta say, I'm not much of a podcast guy anymore. Not really sure why. So I did listen to a few like last year, but they would like all the ones that I was into would end. Like they just stopped recording. So not really sure why that is, but obviously some ones that I've really enjoyed were I used to love Kind of Funny's podcasts. That we always talked about how they were a big inspiration for us. I listened to them every single day, every single week back in the day, but it's been probably at least 3 years since I've really consumed any of their content. One that I probably listened to up until like last year was like Sacred Symbols and like all of Colin Moriarty's gaming podcasts. I always enjoyed him as a host, and when he sort of like separated from them, I listened to his material quite a bit, but obviously, like I'm not listening to any right now, so I kind of just fell off of that too. I would listen to our podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I actually used to listen to our podcast like sometimes. Like I would just listen to some of it.
Back in the day, I would listen to it for on how we can improve, whether it was conversationally or even just from a technical standpoint. I'd listen to it,
or I just wanted to like see how we sounded.
Yeah, especially like the first 60 or so episodes. I would be very intentional about that.
I used to listen to the Gary Vee podcast a lot. He's a very popular podcast. It has nothing to do with gaming really. It's he's an entrepreneur, so he would sort of talk about like, you know, general advice about starting a business, or it was just a really good show to like just learn things, just random things. And he would always have like interesting guests on and stuff like that. And he would often talk about like current events and stuff like that. I listened to several WoW podcasts back in the day when they were recording. One was called WoW Killer. It was by a couple YouTubers that I really enjoyed. They don't record anymore. There was one called The Instance that I think is still going on, but I don't listen to it anymore either. There was a show called The Scuff Podcast, and it was basically a podcast where a bunch of streamers on Twitch would just talk about random stuff that was happening that week. And like I still really like Twitch. Like I watch it all the time, but I don't really listen to that anymore. I don't know why. I don't really listen to podcasts anymore. I sort of just fell out of it. I much more prefer to like listen to music all the time or It's funny. Like I still kind of listen to podcasts, but they're not podcasts. They're YouTube videos. Like, oh, just go to my YouTube and look at my recommended. And if it's a video that I want to watch, I'll listen to it in the car. Like I won't watch it in the car, but I'll just play it. And like, and if it's something that I want to watch, I'll save it for later. Obviously, I usually, I don't know. Podcasts just aren't really my thing anymore. I never listened to a whole lot of them. And when I did, they were always about gaming. What about you, Garrett? What's throw you in there? Which ones do you still listen to?
Yeah, I'm kind of in and out on podcasts myself. I don't listen to them as frequently as I used to because my commutes aren't as lengthy as they used to be.
Yeah, same.
Most of the work I do, if it's not out of state, is within Atlanta. So typically I'd get my podcast in on long drives. That's to this day where I mostly enjoy listening to podcasts is on long drives. Mm-hmm. Every now and then, if it's a podcast that really interests me, I'll listen to it while I work out, but I usually need like the heaviest metal I can find to work out effectively. In the past, similar to you, way back in the day, I listened to Kind of Funny a lot when Colin was a part of it. And I don't have any problem with Kind of Funny today, but I've kept up with Colin here and there on the variety of shows he has. He has a lot of good content through Last Stand Media. Really love his, I can't remember what he calls the more interesting conversations with like the dude from IGN who was fired. That was interesting. A couple of guys fired from IGN. Vince Ingenito, like his more like in-depth, like very singular focused subject conversations are really, really good. I'll occasionally listen to those. I don't listen to Sacred Symbols every week, but if it's about topics that I'm most interested in, I'll check out Sacred Symbols. That's really the only gaming podcast I listen to these days. In the past, I listened to Theo Vaughn's podcast a lot. I think Theo Vaughn's hilarious. Haven't listened to him in a long time, but I still think he's great. I listened to Gavin McGinnis's podcast for a while. This is years ago now, but his stuff was really funny as well when he was just telling stories from his past all by himself, and the podcast was hilarious. But apart from that, there are really like some great podcasts out there that I feel like I should check out. Like I said, I don't really have many opportunities to listen to them in the way I'd like. Yeah, I have listened to most of the Batman Unmasked series on Spotify. And interestingly, I thought it was a lot more I don't want to spoil it for anyone because it's actually, I think it's worth listening to. It's pretty cool. But I was more interested in the first few episodes rather than the latter half of the series. But I do think it's a cool idea I'd like to see more of. I think as far as I can recall, that's all I've really listened to over the years and most recently. So not too many podcasts these days either.
Yeah, it's not that I don't even want to listen to them. All the ones that I really liked don't record anymore. So I kind of just stopped looking for new ones, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Kind of just got burnt out on finding a good one.
Yeah, Preston would probably have a much better answer to this question. Mm-hmm. But one podcast he and I both were massive fans of back in the day was Pretty Much It. Now, Pretty Much It still exists, but it's an entirely different thing now with Eric Striffler. He does movie commentary tracks that are hilarious, that are really good. But it used to be more, I mean, it's always really been movie focused, but Pretty Much It was movie, video games, and a few other things with Jake Baldino was on the show as well. Another guy named Mike was on the show. So that's how I discovered Jake Baldino. I don't know if Baldino still does his Because Video Games podcast or not. I haven't looked into it in a while. I think they do. I've always been a big fan of Jake Baldino over the years, and anything he does, I'm usually checking out. I love Jake Baldino's YouTube channel as well. I'm completely off topic now, but you mentioned watching YouTube videos. Really love Jake's content. Yeah, I've always felt that Jake and I are like soulmates to a degree. We seem to have a very similar mindset and reactions to a lot of the same type of content. Oh. So I feel like we're long lost brothers to some degree. I had the chance to meet him once, but I didn't want to bother him because he was talking to Brian Altano from IGN. It was at the Fallen Order reveal event thing I went to for COG years ago. Mm-hmm. And we were in the cantina at Star Wars Land. I'm like, I could really go talk to him right now, but I didn't want to bother him. So I talked to the Star Wars Explained guy instead.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're soulmates, but you're brothers as well.
Yeah. I would argue that Zach Bynum and I are potentially soulmates.
Oh, but you're lovers.
It's a purely, well, maybe not entirely platonic, but on the outside, it looks entirely platonic with Zach and I.
But not on the inside.
No, yeah. At heart, we are truly lovers, for sure. You and I, to some degree, are lovers as well, Jacob.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible to deny we have a very serious physical and sexual attraction toward one another. All the years we've spent making videos and content is one way to fall in love, for sure.
It is, truly.
And just seeing each other and hearing each other's voices on this podcast.
Yes.
Almost 7.5 years, man.
That's way too long.
Long live. Long live the red and black. Next one comes from, you'll have to forgive me, is it Mufc or just MUFC Lee 89 on Twitter?
I'm sure it stands for something.
I can't, unless you've changed your name, I can't recall we've ever heard from you before. So thanks for writing in.
He has a Twitter name. I think it's Bruce.
Oh, Bruce Bogtrotter.
Yes. Should
Bruce.
have put that too.
Bruce, we've heard from you many times, my friend. Thanks for writing in again. That Twitter handle threw me off there for a second. He says, have you guys seen the leaked details for the pre-order DLC for Hogwarts Legacy? Do you find it strange that we have no release date yet? And what are you guys most looking forward to? I'm unbelievably hyped for this game and I hope there's no delay. Well, Bruce, I wholeheartedly feel the same as you do. I hope there is no delay. I imagine if it's been heavily rumored and even suggested and even stated by the studio that it is releasing this year. It is odd that we don't have an exact date, but I think what they're waiting for is all the other games that have either been delayed or have been rumored to be delayed before they land on a date. I think we will get it this year, but they're probably waiting for like Ragnarok's release, other releases that are coming around the holiday season. So a lot of things are still up in the air. So I think we'll probably get it closer to the fall. Maybe even by the end of the summer, we'll have another or an actual release date. Jacob and I looked at the article detailing the DLC. It was all like cosmetic stuff that seemed like pre-order DLC and everything.
And then there was like a 72 early access period for maybe pre-ordering or something.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to pre-order and play 3 days early. I may even buy like, that's the thing, like I don't know if I'm going to buy a collector's edition of this because I have a digital PS5. I think I intend to play this on PS5. I hope we get substantial reviews detailing frame rates, because if it doesn't play 60 FPS on PS5, which I'd be shocked if it didn't have a performance mode, but if it doesn't, I'm going straight to PC because I got to have a high frame rate. I'm well beyond the playing really any game at 30 FPS these days. I'm over that. Yeah. So we'll see. But we've obviously talked about this game ad nauseum over the years, so I'm not going to go too in depth. But I am most interested at this point in all the minor things that maybe a lot of people are overlooking. I'd love to be able to just walk into the Great Hall and play Wizard's Chess if I feel like it. I'd like to collect cards from Chocolate Frogs. I think it'd be cool to have like a lot of collectibles in the game that gives you even more reason to explore. I'd like to just walk into Hogsmeade and go to the Three Broomsticks is in Diagon Alley, right? What's the bar in Hogsmeade?
Hogsmeade.
I can't remember, but I'd like to just walk in there and like get a butterbeer that gives you like maybe like a minor stat boost. That's like totally insignificant, but just the fact that you can walk in and have that immersive experience is like, I just want a butterbeer. You can grab a cup of butterbeer.
Three Broomsticks is in Hogsmeade.
Cool. I'd like there to be like some really interesting surprises. Like what if there was like an underground broomstick racing club in Hogwarts? That's kind of like under the radar, and you discover like, hey, like at night we go out and race these tracks we set up around around the castle and around the grounds that you can compete in and like win prizes. Like little ideas like that. I'm really hoping for. Like all the broad stuff is great. The classes, the exploration, the art design, the combat, all that, like, of course I'm excited about. It's all like the minor things about Harry Potter I've always fantasized about. Like when Harry wasn't in class or fighting Voldemort, what was he doing on like a more laid back day? Like I want those experiences in the game.
We want to experience the day-to-day that makes Hogwarts what it is.
Totally. Like I don't need every single day at Hogwarts to be the most dramatic, crazy thing ever. Yeah. I just want it to be like, I'm just at school in the wizarding world, living my life here. I'm really hoping for little things like that.
I really hope that the people that you could choose as like friends, like I hope there's like a lot of flexibility there, like in sort of choosing like who you hang out with or like the people that are in your house, I guess. Hope there's some good options. Because I don't want to like pick a house and then they're like, oh my God, I hate everyone in this house. Like I wish I would have chose something different. Surely they wouldn't make it like that.
And unless the marketing team has withheld the fact that Quidditch is in the game, it'd be an interesting marketing strategy to wait till close to release. Like, oh, by the way, you can play Quidditch in this game. That would be sick.
Be good.
I mean, for years, when Preston and I, and Jacob included now, have fantasized about a game like this, I've always imagined Quidditch being a big part of it. It doesn't seem to be the case with this, which isn't the end of the world. You can still ride broomsticks, but that's something I really, really would love. But that aside, my only other hope that I've mentioned a million times is just like, the prime opportunity for an amazing tutorial introduction sequence through Diagon Alley shopping for school supplies and riding the Hogwarts Express to school.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's no better opportunity to introduce you to the game's mechanics, characters, and expectations up front. That's a dream of mine that doesn't seem to be the case either, but that would be a great surprise if they included that.
I agree.
You got anything else to add, Jacob?
No, I don't.
I got to pull up my backlog for this last question. I got to find it.
Oh, do I need to prepare too? Oh, backlog. I remember I used to.
Yeah, I got it. Edward Richards is the big finale today. Says, "Hey yo, so glad to hear your voices again, boys. Always keeping me entertained on my drive to work. I was just wondering if you have any games on your backlogs that are you're excited to get back to, because there seems to be a dry spell of releases recently. If you haven't gotten anything you're playing on your backlog, what games would you recommend from the last couple of years? Cheers, boys." Thanks for writing in, Edward. I have a lot of games in my backlog. Notable ones, I recently got back into Hellblade. I'm almost done with it, but I haven't finished it. I owe it to myself to play the Ori games.
The first one's so good.
I'm almost done with Metal Gear Solid 1. I have every intention to play 2 and 3. I couldn't finish Metro Exodus. Every time I go back to it, it just doesn't grab me for some reason.
Yeah, it never interested me.
I really would like to go back and play the Spyro remasters, because I platinum Spyro 1, but I love those games, dude. I still love them. I'd like to go back and finish both Ripto's Revenge and Year of the Dragon. This is random, but a VR game I loved from PAX years ago was Gorn. Gorn is a really fun VR game I'd like to play at some point. And of course, Persona 5, jury's out on whether or not I'll actually ever finish that game. I do, like I said, I will always admit to its pure excellence. It is a phenomenal game.
You don't even understand.
Every single way. I just can't commit to it for some reason. Because every time I'm working out or making coffee or going to class or hanging out with friends, I'm like, I could be doing this right now with real people. It's my problem.
Yeah. But they're not anime characters, Garrett. You just don't get it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Jacob, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I haven't had to pee this bad in a long time. My bladder's going to explode, bro. So whatever you have to say.
Do it quick.
I'm all ears. Just do it quick.
So I don't really keep much of a backlog anymore for just obvious reasons of me never getting to it. Like if there was a game that I haven't played and it's been out for a few years now, I'm just not going to play it. Odds are. But things that I am trying to that I want to get back around to playing. Definitely Horizon Forbidden West. I do really want to play that game. I just need to be in the right mood.
That's so bad. I forgot to mention that. That's also in my backlog.
Well, you started it, right?
Yeah, but I need to finish that.
And that's really all I can think of right now is Horizon. I try not to keep a big backlog anymore, just because I don't know. I like keeping my slate open. I like just sort of playing whatever I want to play and not feeling like I'm obligated to play something because I missed it. Like if I didn't want to play, there's probably a good reason. I don't want to pressure myself to feel like I need to go play something.
That is very fair, Jacob. Completely understand.
Also, I have a lot less time to play things, and
same.
Sometimes my interest is wavering. So,
is that it from you, Jacob?
That's it.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to 271 of the It's Obvious podcast. I'm glad we could do this 2 consecutive weeks. Maybe we'll push for 3, Jacob. Let's make it a goal to make it 3 weeks in a row.
Could you imagine?
And why stop there? Why don't we do it every week for the rest of our lives?
You're insane.
Lord willing, it is definitely impossible, but we're going to strive for week 3 next week with 272. We'll see if more substantial news comes out between now and then. But in the meantime, we greatly appreciate your support and writing in and supporting this podcast over the years. Even when we go months without releasing an episode, it means the world to us, and we can't thank you guys enough. Again, I got to pee. Bladder's going to explode, so I'm going to go do that. Well, Jacob, I love you to bits, and hit me up anytime if you want to play some more Hunt.
Definitely. I will do that. Everybody take care. Have a nice week, and send us more questions in, please.
Yes, please.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.